please be reminded to keep
Well, I'm afraid we lost her.
Right, it's probably she should have some technical issues or some connectivity issue. No worries, we can just continue with the housekeeping rules. Okay, we have some housekeeping rules. Okay, all the workshops will be taking place in this main room, of course, and all the questions during the workshops will be observed or will be taken through the Slido, and Slido QR code is shown on the screen, whereas the Slido link will be shared in the Zoom chat. It's been shared already. Also, timely, it will be shared. Along with the Slido link, actually, there will be another link for the PGRC 2022 satisfaction survey. Evaluation link will be shared also. So it's a request to all the participants, please fill up that survey. With regards to, okay, can you go back to the previous slide? And Chai is here. She can continue with the rest of the housekeeping rules.
All right, so sorry. So the housekeeping rule, the first one is please be reminded to keep your microphone muted throughout the workshop. Number 2, Slido will be used for questions. QR code and link will be shared before and at the end of the workshop. And number 3, at the end of the workshop, we will have a virtual group photo session. So please switch on your camera and give us your best smile. So let's proceed with the workshop titled Writing Manuscript for Journal Publication. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Rupam Konor from the School of Hospitality, Tourism and Events, Taylor's University, Malaysia, moderator of the workshop. Dr. Rupam, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pang. Absolute pleasure to be moderating this session, and all the participants who are joining across the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends on where you are. Welcome to the day 2 workshop number 4. In this workshop, we have a very interesting topic that we're going to share, and we have some very interesting speaker as well. You're going to share on the expertise based on how to write paper, how to journal publication. So let me introduce the speaker for this session. It's none other than Dr. Romualdo Mabuan. He is a faculty member at the Graduate Studies and Transnational Education Department, Institute of Education of Far Eastern University in Manila, the Philippines. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Applied Linguistics from the DeSalle University, Manila as well, and also a Commission of Higher Education Scholar and a Master degree in Teaching in English from the Philippines Normal University in Manila. His research interests include TESOL, 21st Century Pedagogy, and also language documentation. He has presented his research in several countries, as well as published them in scholarly peer-reviewed journal. He currently has a Scopus H-index of 4 and Google Scholar H-index of 6. In this workshop, he will be sharing on publishing in scholarly peer-reviewed journals, which requires a very good skill set. Also adhering the academic writing conversation, this workshop also provide the participant with practical tips and tasks in crafting a cogent and coherent and cohesive the paper that shows a strong argument and also clear organization and audible authorial voice. So without further ado, let me hand over the virtual floor to Dr. Mabuan. Dr. Mabuan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Konar. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure and honor to be engaging with you this afternoon. Let me share my slides. All right, the workshop title assigned to me is Writing Manuscripts for Journal Publication. But before anything else, I would like to ask our participants here to describe their PGRC experience so far in one word in the chat. Let me know if everybody's ready. Okay, from Botran, useful, Mohammed, exciting, brilliant, opportunity. Okay, thank you. Me too, I feel exciting, and um, it's been a long time since I visited Malaysia in not long time, 2018, pre-pandemic, and I hope to be back again. The research process may be described as a combination of steps, such as conceptualizing, data gathering, writing, and disseminating. You know, for those who have already experienced conceptualizing, writing, presenting, and publishing their papers, uh, it requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, right, from the conceptualization stage to the publication stage. But every researcher would have to undergo this process. Publishing our paper is one of the um, dissemination steps. You may also present it in conferences and ultimately publish it in scholarly peer-reviewed journals. In many parts of the world, especially in universities, publishing in scholarly peer-reviewed journal has already become a requirement. In fact, we have a famous line: "Publish or perish," right? I'm sure in Malaysia and many parts of Asia, the same uh, trend is being observed. So today, I would be sharing about these topics. Why do we need to publish? What and what not to publish? How do we structure the paper? And then proceed or end with writing tips. Along the discussion, I will be asking our participants to participate. Okay, I prepared some questions, so please feel free to type your responses in the chat. Okay, so before anything else, why do we need to publish? Just a phrase, especially for our graduate student participants. Why is there a need to publish? Thank you, Juan. Knowledge sharing, yeah, that's one. Should be one of the goals. Yeah, to get promoted for promotion, a requirement for graduation. Most universities are now requiring their students to have a paper publication before they could be awarded with their diploma, or they could be allowed to do their thesis or propose or dissertation defense. Promotion, contribution to the field, yes, all of these are valid reasons. Now, each of us has different reasons for publishing, but whatever the reason is that you may have, note that editors, reviewers, and the research community actually don't consider those reasons when they assess our work for potential publication in the journal. Uh, they have to focus on the merit of the paper and whether it is publishable or not. So first, it is important that we consider the four types of knowledge that Matsuda indicates all researchers should possess in order to be able to conceptualize research and get it published in academic journals or peer-reviewed journals. According to Matsuda, we need to possess content knowledge, methodological, procedural, and genre knowledge. Content knowledge is knowing what research questions have already been addressed, as well as what research questions remain. This is important before we conceptualize the study that we intend to publish in the future. uh, Surveying the field, surfacing the research gap, identifying what questions have already been answered in the topic that we would like to investigate, and knowing which questions remain unanswered, and trying to answer that question as a research gap. The second knowledge is methodological knowledge. This is knowing how to answer our research questions through the data collection and data analysis. The next knowledge is knowing how best to communicate the information. After we have gathered data, answered the research questions, we decide how we share the findings that we've got. It's either we do paper presentations in conferences, share in our school, or present in scholarly and peer-reviewed journals. The last knowledge is procedural knowledge. This is knowing to choose appropriate outlets for the research output. These outlets would be the publishing houses, such as the various journals that you could choose from. So there are considerations that you need to take into account when planning to publish your research in these kinds of journals, which we will tackle in the next slides. Swales and Feek provided some considerations in academic writing that each researcher should pay attention if they wish to get their manuscripts published in academic journals. These are the audience, purpose, organization, style, flow, and presentation. First and foremost, when we write our paper, we have to have a target audience in mind. Is your target audience uh, only for a small community, for a group of teachers, for a group of students, or do you have a general audience? Should also know the purpose of your study, the organization or the structure or the format of the paper, the academic writing style. We have to follow some academic writing conventions if we want our paper to get published, the writing flow as well as the presentation of the information. Now, what and what not to publish? You cannot just publish or submit anything and hope that it will get published by your target journal. Some of the publishable materials would involve new and original results or methods, reviews or summaries of particular subjects, manuscripts that advance knowledge and understanding in the scientific field. Some submissions that may not warrant publications include reports of little or no scientific interest, out-of-date work, duplications of previously published work, incorrect and unacceptable conclusions. So you'll have to consider this. You need a strong, effective manuscript to present your contributions to the scientific community. You can actually publish a wide range of write-ups, but of course our focus would be journal articles. Now, what are the characteristics of journal articles? Journal articles are narrow in scope, context, and claims. Usually, they are around 10 or sometimes 40 pages. There's no hard rule for this, but based on my experience, most of the journal articles would span from 5,000 to 7,000 words, so that's around 10 pages. Journals have limited space, so you also have to structure your paper well and follow the author's guidelines of the journal. And for scholarly peer-reviewed journals, publishing takes time because there's a peer review process that needs to be observed. So sometimes it can your article may get published in 1 to 2 years. Well, recently I had an experience publishing a journal in less than a year, around 8 months. But most of the Scopus index journals would process your paper for about 1 year or even longer, especially during this pandemic where there were some delays. A journal article should also be carefully organized around a single significant idea, and it should be submitted one at a time. This is one of the ethical considerations in publishing in a journal. If you have one manuscript, do not submit it in several journals simultaneously. Okay? You have to submit it to one journal only, wait for the feedback from the journal. If it is accepted, then well and good. If it is rejected, then you can benefit from the peer review, from the comments provided, and then you can revise the paper and submit it again in another journal. So, what is a good manuscript? Basically, a good manuscript should have a good content. It should be useful and exciting. It could provide another perspective, another input, another contribution to the knowledge base of the scientific community, and it is presented well, meaning it should be clearly and logically constructed. It should follow a template. A good manuscript should have a novel, clear, useful, and exciting message, presented and constructed in a logical manner, and would allow the reviewers and editors to grasp the significance of it. Now, the publication journey may take a long time. Sometimes it could be frustrating. I recall my first experience in publishing. I got rejected many times. So sometimes it's very frustrating because you would write the paper, submit it to the journal, and then hope that it would get reviewed, and then after the review, you could receive either accept with revision or reject. Okay, so it's a numbers game. But in order to limit the failure or the rejections, we have to craft our paper well, okay, so that we'll have more chances of our paper getting reviewed and, of course, getting published. So we have a golden rule in publishing articles in a journal. I present target and tailor. By targeting means you target your journal. This is a very important strategy that works well for me. If I'd like to get published in a certain journal, I have to explore the journal, understand the journal policies, the guidelines, the scope and coverage of the journal, the formatting. I also have to read some articles published by the journal. It's important to know the aims and scope of the journal and whether your article is aligned with the aims and scope of the journal. Also, it is important to read and understand the submission guidelines of the article, of the journal. So this is an example, aims and scope for the journal Scopus Index, the Asia Pacific Education Researcher. So as you can see here, in the description, they indicate that they are an international refereed journal, and they publish paper on varied academic disciplines, anthropology, applied linguistics, etc. So you have to read the aims and scope of the journal and see if your paper fits in. Also, it is important that you read and understand clearly the submission guidelines. If you don't, your paper may be rejected outright. For example, if they require 5,000 word count, but your paper, your manuscript has 7,000, so it could be rejected. So it's really important that you follow the submission guidelines of your target journal. But which journal? There are many options out there. The journals may be non-peer-reviewed, peer-reviewed, academic. You can also consider academic or professional journals, the indexing, the ranking of the journals. Most of the time, we are required by our institutions to publish in peer-reviewed and academic journals. Also, you have to be careful in submitting to predatory journals, journals that would allow you to publish your paper in 1 week. Okay, so there is something like that, but they would require you to pay, right? So be very careful about this. You have to check the indexing of the journal, the reputation of the journal, um, and whether the journal has clear editorial policy and it's not predatory. One way to locate to locate journals where you could publish your manuscript would be by searching Simago JR, sjr.com. Okay, simagojr.com. And then there are many journals there. You can search for the journals, find your target journal, and then explore the journal description. Okay, you can also ask your advisor, your mentor, your colleagues, check citations, references, and bibliography. You can also join associations in your field. So, for example, in my case, I'm I'm an active member of the TESOL International Association, so they have their journals, the TESOL Quarterly. I could submit my article there. In the Philippines, we have the Philippine Journal of Linguistics. So becoming a member of a certain organization and would also allow you to submit to the journal of that organization. Another thing is participating and presenting in conferences. Some conferences would actually have conference proceedings. So you could first, once your paper is accepted, or abstract is accepted, you could submit your paper, present your paper in the conference, and then submit it for the conference proceedings. That's also possible. You can also check electronic databases, archives, and many more, okay, to look for your target journals. Universities have journals. I'm sure Taylor's University, just like our university, Far Eastern University, have journals which would also welcome submission from students and faculty. From targeting, we proceed to tailoring. So when we tailor our journal, it's important that we adhere to the author's guidelines, consider the structure required. It also, although it is not required by some journals, I think it's a good strategy to consider citing authors from the journal itself and our scholars on the editorial board. Maybe it gives an idea to the editors that you understand well the journal, you read the journal, and you would like to be published in that journal. And of course, never forget the journal's intended audience. It's possible that you may have a well-written manuscript, but you submit it in an inappropriate journal. It would certainly result in non-publication, non-acceptance. So be very careful about targeting and tailoring so that you don't waste your time. Okay, there are many reasons for journal rejection. Inappropriate journal, as I mentioned, no argument in the paper, the focus is too narrow or too broad, it's off topic, not scholarly, poor structure, poorly written, and many more. But rejection is part of the journey. Okay, so if you submit 10, be very happy if one get published. Okay, it's a numbers game. So what is important here is your persistence. Keep going. Your rejection is normal. In fact, the rejection rate in journals is around 30 to 90%. Especially if you're targeting Q1 or Q2 journals, the rejection rate is very high. Okay, so when you submit, it's either you get the results accept, revise, resubmit, reject. Okay, so of course you celebrate your journey if you get accepted or get the feedback revised and resubmit with minor issue. Even if it is rejected, you can still benefit from the feedback of the peer reviewers. So you can polish your paper and submit again. Okay, just don't stop. Even prolific writers get rejected. So I know a lot of well-published authors who are still rejected, okay, many times. So that's really part of the journey to publication. Now, in order to limit the number of rejections, we could do something that we can control, and that is structuring our paper well and adhering to the journal submission guidelines. MacGregor listed the basic elements of a research report that is publishable. So it would include the research methodology, conceptual framework, the bookends. These we call the front matter, like the title, abstract, keywords, and in the back matter, references, appendices. Your paper should also have an introduction, literature review, methods, findings, discussion, conclusions, and recommendations. Now, most of the journals these days would follow a certain structure, and this has become a trend for most journals globally. The paper should be structured following the IMRD format. IMRD stands for Introduction, Method, Results, and Discussion. It outlines a consistent and standardized format. It makes scientific writing easier. It maintains the essence and function of each section, makes it easier for readers to read and understand, and it increases the chances of acceptance by publishing houses. Um, there are some questions that you need to consider when structuring your IMRAD manuscript. The introduction section usually answers the question, what subject did you study? It also includes the why. Why did you study that subject? The methods, how did you study the subject? The results would answer the question, what did you find? And the discussion section would answer the question, what do your findings mean? Take note that you do not need to write the IMRAD sections of your paper in that order, in the IMRD order. You can start writing the methods, proceed to the results, and then after that you can establish a central theme and proceed to writing the title, abstract, introduction, and discussion sections. It's a non-linear process. It's cyclical. It's up to you. You can also, of course, have a working title, a working abstract, a draft of the introduction, and then you go back and forth. Okay, but for me, it really works well if I draft the method section first before the other parts, methods and results. The IMRAD is your storyline. Writing a research paper, getting it published, means understanding the academic arguments, the elements of an academic arguments. And an entire paper is like one story. All parts are interconnected. All parts should be unified, should be coherently structured to tell your story. Your story is your argument, your thesis. So the key arguments would or the key argument of your paper would be best presented by following the IMRAD format. So each section of the IMRAD will have to be written well in connection with the other parts of the paper. Here are some of the parts of the IMRAD paper. So beginning with title. Title is the first part that our readers would pay attention. So 100% readers would focus on the title. If the title is interesting, they would proceed to reading the abstract, and then after that they can scan the IMRAD sections. So for the title, you need to answer the question, what's it about? The title should be brief, informative, readily searchable by a person or a machine or a database. For example, if you are searching for an article at Google Scholar, you would be keying in some keywords. So have that kind of perspective. If you were to search for an article such as the one you're going to publish in your target journal, what would be the key words or phrases that you would use to search? Okay, so have that mindset when crafting your research title. Next is the abstract. What is it in a nutshell? Basically, an abstract is a miniature of the entire paper. So, a good abstract, according to Swales and Feek, also contains the IMRAD elements. In the introduction, as mentioned in the previous slide, you have to answer the question, why did you do it and what did you study? It should contain the problem, the importance of the problem, known and unknown ideas or findings about the problem, as well as your research questions and research objectives. The study site, it is not actually separated. The study site or the research locale is embedded in the method section. For the method, how did you do it? It should discuss how you gather the data, what kind of data, who are your participants, where did you conduct the study, the research procedure, and so on, as I will discuss in the next slides. And it also includes the justification for choosing your methodology. The results section will have to answer the question, what did you find? Here, you need to summarize findings with headings and informative figures. You don't discuss yet in the results. You wait for the discussion section. So in the results section, you need to make sense of the findings or the results. What does it all mean? So what now that you have found these results? Explain the result. Check if you have answered the research questions, if you have achieved the objectives of the study. Also indicate the limitations of your study, the implications of the findings, future research directions, application, and recommendations. The conclusions section is optional. It could be subsumed under the discussion, as well as the acknowledgements. Of course, references section is required, following the style guidelines of the APA 7th edition. As you can see, the introduction section is shaped in inverted. This is an hourglass, right? So an inverted triangle, which means that in writing the introduction, you begin from the general down to the particular. So you survey the field, you surface the gap, and then after that, you present your research questions. Whereas the discussion section is a pyramid from the specifics, because you need to answer the research questions, and then after that, to the general context, because you'll have to connect the findings to the field. Okay? Now, the research title, there is no hard rule for the number of research title, but most journals would require you to have around 10 to 12 words. The title should capture the reader's attention, and it should differentiate your paper from the other papers published. Keep it simple, brief, and attractive. Use appropriate descriptive words and avoid abbreviations and jargon. So your readers could easily understand and follow the study. As I mentioned a while ago, the abstract is like a miniature of the entire paper, so it should also contain the IMRAD sections. Again, there's no hard rule in doing this, but Swales and Feek found out that most abstracts of journal articles would have around 25% of the introduction, 25% of the methods, 35% of the results, and then around 15% of the discussion or conclusion. Okay. The abstract is a mini version of the paper. It uses simple past, and it contains the following elements: the principal objectives or the introduction, method, principal results, and main conclusions. So here's an example abstract from the study. It's a Scopus Index article. It's titled Students' Online Learning Challenges During the Pandemic and How They Cope with Them, the Case of the Philippines. So this is the abstract of the study. From the word recently until void, you can see the introduction. Okay, the gap is also indicated in the introduction. And then the method is written here using a mixed methods approach. So that's the method section. The results section, the findings further revealed, and the discussion section. You have here the implications for further practice. Okay, so not all the time the IMRAD structure is followed in writing the abstract. Sometimes I could also read in some journal abstracts that they start with the method section. Okay, so regardless of the arrangement, the suggestion is all of the IMRAD sections should be represented in writing the abstract. And the abstract is around 250 to 300 words, although some journals, again, will have a requirement for this, and you need to follow the submission guidelines. Now, let's proceed to writing the main sections of the paper. The first one is writing your introduction section. Here, you need to answer the questions: what subject did you study? What did others write on the topic you are studying? So you have to integrate review of related literature about your topic. And why is the subject you are studying important? This why here would actually require you to explicitly mention the research gap that your study would like to fill in. Okay? Do not give information that is not related to the current subject, and do not be tempted to list all content in the introduction section. Okay? Only the relevant concepts in your study. Now, Swales and Feek provided an interesting approach to writing the introduction section, and I find this very useful. They call it the CARS model. CARS stands for creating a research space. The CARS model helps you identify and fill in the research gap. So I'd like to highlight first the importance of indicating the research gap in your paper, because this part would actually determine the significance of your study and what it could potentially contribute to the field, to the academic community. So identifying a knowledge gap is important before you proceed to your to conducting your study and writing your paper. It is important because it introduces and explains findings that support the new research. It synthesizes the main conclusions of literature relevant to the topic. It highlights unresolved issues or questions within the literature and establishes the originality or significance of the new research. For example, I think this is a common experience for all of us during the pandemic. Right? During the pandemic, most schools in the Philippines shifted from fully face-to-face to online modality. So we grappled with the situation because it was too abrupt. The shift was too sudden, and there is dearth of research about doing effective online distance education in the Philippines. So that is one of the research gap, right? From the student perspectives, from the policy, etc., etc. Now, von Brock et al. Provided a framework here for identifying research gaps in the literature review. So it's important that before you proceed to your study, you survey the field, you identify the gap, and once you identify the gap, that could be an interesting point of departure to investigate the topic. That would be the significance of your study. And once the editors read your paper and see the beauty of your study, the potential contribution of your study, it would contribute to the chance of your paper getting published. According to von Brock and his co-authors, we can use the framework of localization, characterization, verification, and presentation in order to surface the research gap. The localization strategy depends on the type of the research gap that you will identify. So you need to locate by surveying the field, reading relevant literature, reading publications relevant to the topic. After that, you need to characterize the type of gap. Then verify by substantiating the existence of the research gap. How do you find the research gaps? They could be found in the discussion sections of the journal articles. Most discussion sections would also indicate the limitations of the study, recommendations for future research directions. Then this is one way to verify the gap. And then after that, you proceed to the presentation of the gap in the literature. Now, there are many types of research gap. It could be a methodological conflict gap, a contradictory evidence gap, a knowledge void gap, action knowledge conflict gap, evaluation void gap, or theory application gap. If the research gap is methodological, then your localization strategy would include scrutinizing if findings on a certain topic are inconclusive with regard to applied research methods. If it is a contradictory evidence gap, you can synthesize key findings and determine the contradictions. If it is a knowledge void gap, you could analyze literature with regard to theoretical concepts and then look for specific gaps or uncharted under research areas of the research. Most of my research would actually fall on this kind of research gap, knowledge void gap. If it is an action knowledge conflict gap, you could collect information about action and then relate this information to the knowledge base. If it is evaluation, then you can analyze if research findings have been evaluated and empirically verified, such as the meta analysis. If it is a theory application void gap, then you can analyze the theories that have been employed to explain certain phenomena and then identify further theories that might contribute to the knowledge base as well. Now, back to the CARS model, in writing an introduction, there are 3 moves suggested. Move 1, establishing a territory. Move 2, establishing a niche. And move 3 is occupying the niche. In move 1, you can do one or all of these. You can claim centrality, make topic generalizations, or review items of previous research. In move 2, you can either counterclaim or indicate a gap or raise a question or continue a tradition or combine all of these. While in move 3, you can outline the purpose of the study by announcing the present research. You can also announce the principal findings and or indicate the structure of the article. So let's get into these moves. Okay, I'm still in the time. Okay, in move 1, you can establish a territory and topicality. The following expressions can be used in expressing the topicality of your research. For example, the line here, the increasing interest in. So in my case, my interest is in teaching the macro skills or TESOL. I'm also interested in the use of educational technology. So for example, MOOCs or massive open online courses. So I could write here the increasing interest in technology-mediated communication has heightened the need for. Okay, and then fill in the blank. So these are useful sentence stems that you could use for topicality. To review the previous research, in your review of related literature, you can use the following phrases. X shows that, reports that, states that. Okay, these are citation verbs. Okay, let's have here an example for move 1. I'm not sure if I can ask someone to read this. Are they allowed to speak or not? If not, I can just be the one.
Dr. Mabuan, if you can summarize, it would be great.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. It will be long. All right. This example paragraph here is an instance of establishing a territory. As you can see, you are already embedding relevant literature, reviewing the previous research, and then surfacing the central topic of the study that you are investigating. Okay, that is move 1. In move 2, after you survey the previous studies, you start indicating a gap. You can counterclaim and then you can indicate the gap. You may use the expressions such as this one. Previous studies failed to consider this and that, and therefore your study is going to fill in that particular gap. Or previous studies were incomplete, inconclusive, etc. Okay, or there is little information about previous study. The research has tended to focus on rather than on. So these are example sentence stems that you can use to indicate a gap. Here's an example paragraph for that. Let's just read the first one. Despite the initial pedagogical aim of contrastive rhetoric, so here you are already counterclaiming, leading to indicating a gap. However, the insights gained by research have not been. And then after indicating the gap, you present the need to do another study in order to fill in the identified research gap. And then finally, in writing your introduction, you can occupy the niche by outlining the purpose of your study. You can say, the aim of the present study is to, and then continue by indicating the objective of your study. Swell Scientific would say some paper would indicate the principal findings, but this is optional because usually the findings are indicated in the results section. Okay, so here's an example. Again, in the interest of time, we have to continue to the next section. In writing the methods section, you need to indicate the methodology, the entire framework that you follow in conducting the study. So identify the research design. Is it quali or quanti or mixed methods? Then the method you use, like survey, experiment, etc. The research locale, the participants or the population, and any other information. Of course, this also includes the data gathering procedure as well as the data analysis. All right, so here are some of the parts of the method section. The verb tense used here is past tense to indicate the procedure that you used in conducting the study. So here's an example method section. So we will not read this anymore, but you can see the annotation here. In this example, you can see that the method section links to the question, provides methodological rationale for the choice of sample population, provides the description of method, and provides the methodological rationale. You can also start putting in-text citations here, especially when you are rationalizing the selection of a particular research design and method. Now, on to the results section. Here, the results section would have to include the following elements. The results or the findings. You can include tables or figures, your observations about the results, and then the results of any calculations using the data. You use the simple past tense to refer what was found or observed. In writing your results section, you have to summarize the key findings with a combination of text and visuals, like tables or figures. Arrange the results in the order of importance, or you can also arrange the results according to the research questions. So if you have 3 questions, for example, then you can arrange the results by section, like section 1 answers research question 1, section 2 answers research question 2, and so on. Present results without any interpretations or discussing implications, because you will have to do that in the discussion section. For cross-checking the results section, you have to display only the key findings, avoid redundancy, like what what you presented in the table should not be repeated in the narrative form or in the paragraph. Okay, because some writers would do that, would write exactly what can be read in the table. So what you write in the paragraph format should be the highlights only of the findings. The results section, I am combining now. The results and discussion section usually have two parts. These are the report and commentary. The report section or the report part would show the results, whereas the comment part would include the discussion. So when you are reporting the findings of your study, you can use some of these expressions. For example, you can refer to your table or figure by saying table 1 shows that, or you can also support this trend with data, filter A correctly filtered, or if needed, you can note any additional secondary trends and support them with data, or note any exceptions to your main trends or unexpected outcomes. Remember that the report part or the presentation of the results part is data driven. Your opinion, your meaning making here is not yet included. Whereas the commentary, the discussion will be researcher based. This is you making sense of the findings. Okay, here you can provide an explanation. For example, you can write a feasible explanation of this is this trend can be explained by, so the attributes. Why do you have those findings? You can also compare to other research, or you can evaluate whether the findings support or contradict a hypothesis or an existing finding. And state the bottom line. What does all of the data mean? Now, to give you an example of a structure of data commentary, we have here the different parts of the results and discussion, location elements and or summary statements, highlighting statements, and then the discussions of implications, problems, etc. Okay, let's have this example. All right. Could you quickly type in the chat the first and the last word? Okay, I think that would make it faster. The first and the last word for the location statement and indicative summary. Where do you think is the location statement and the indicative summary? You can type the first and the last word in the chat. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. First, the location statement here would be the table 4 shows. Okay, it locates the visual. It could be a table or a figure, and then the indicative summary here shows survey respondents and so on. Okay. It's followed by highlighting the statement in terms of a linking as clause. So after you present the location statement and the summary, you proceed to highlighting statement. As I mentioned, you don't repeat all of the information you present in the table. Okay, highlighting statement, for example, as can be seen from the table, and then present the highlights. After that is the meaning making. So you proceed to the interpretations and implications. This makes your results and discussion section organized, okay, and easy to follow by your reader when you do this, or when you include these elements: location, summary, highlight, and then proceed to your interpretations and implications. Although in some journal, you may be required to separate your results and discussion. Okay, so there is a section for the results. There is also a section for the discussion. In some journals, it's allowed to do point by point. Result 1, discussion 1, result 2, discussion 2, and so on. Okay, so if you do that, then you may follow this particular flow for the data commentary. So again, using the example article that I've presented a while back, you can see here how the authors presented the results and the discussion of their article, of their findings. Look at the highlighted expressions. The current study explores. So it's like summarizing or going back again to the purpose of the study. And then the line here, the findings revealed that they presented their findings, and they connected to the findings of the previous study by writing with reference to previous studies, and then provide in-text citations. Again, connecting to the studies related to their topic, the current study has complemented. And another highlighted line here, further, this study extended. Okay, so after they presented the study, they connected it with the existing findings and connect the findings to the field. Okay, so that's one. And here in this example, they are already interpreting the findings. For example, the highlighted line, this is not surprising considering is already an example of meaning making. This is already a data commentary, okay, discussing the findings. Then the line, the findings reveal that, okay, presenting the findings again, and then after that, these findings are consistent with that of, connecting with the previous study. And then the line, this data highlights the need, again, connecting to the field. Okay, so in the results and discussion, you can embed findings, discussion, implication, okay, as shown in this example. Swales and Feek also provided some moves in writing the results in the discussion section. In move 1, you can provide the background information. It's like reviewing the purpose of the study. This is optional, but it is probable in some fields. The obligatory part would be the summarizing and reporting the key results, as well as commenting on the results. Okay, the moves 2 and 3. They should be included in the results and discussion sections. Move 4, stating the limitations of the study, is optional, but most journals would actually require you to indicate the limitations of the study, as well as the implications and recommendations for future implementation. Move 5, most journals would already require this. Okay? So these are just examples for move 1. I will not elaborate on this more in the interest of time. So some expressions you can use for move 1 would be this. And then indicate the limitations of the study, especially if you have a limited sample size, or the instrument you use, or in terms of research design, for example, you can indicate the limitations. Some of the useful phrases you could use for or in stating the limited scope of your study would be this. It should be noted that the study has examined only and then present. So you have to be honest with the limitations of the study. And move 3, identify the useful areas of further research. Now, in addition, in writing the results and discussion section, it is important that you also learn in writing with hedging. Hedging means confidence in uncertainty. Sometimes some authors may claim big for a small data that they have. So it is important that we qualify our claims using hedging devices, such as these modal verbs, might may, lexical verbs appear, modal adverbs, modal adjectives, and modal nouns. For example, which of the following sentences here from A to D to E is the strongest? Okay, our time is almost done. So I'll just wrap up in a few minutes. As you can see here, sentence A is very strong. It claims, whereas E is the weakest. So this is an example of doing hedging. If you are not very confident because of the limitations of your study, it is important that you qualify the claim. So it's better to do hedging than make big claims out of the limitations of your study. Okay, so more examples of hedging, stronger to weaker. Finally, in writing the conclusion, it's either you include it in the discussion section, or sometimes some journals would allow you to create a subsection for conclusion, subsection for the recommendation. So either way, the conclusion should be presented. It is the final argument. Here, you need to link the introduction and the conclusion. Again, a paper is like one story. So you can summarize the significance of the findings and then the implications of the findings, its contribution to the field. Synthesize in the conclusion, but do not repeat the information. Okay? So after that, you can present the implications. So as shown here, several implications can be drawn from the findings of this study. First implication, second implication, third implication, last implication. So you can have several implications. I think the implication would actually indicate the significance of your study. After summarizing the findings, making sense of the findings, what now? So you can show that in the implications. And of course, after that, indicate recommendations for future research directions. Okay? To sum up, in order to produce a publishable manuscript for a peer-reviewed journal, you need to craft your academic argument in a storyline. And one way to do that is by following the IMRAD structure. So that the publication journey may be worthwhile, although you may receive rejections. You have to keep going because it is part of the journey, and in order to enjoy the journey, you have to follow the academic writing conventions, follow the style guidelines of the target journals, and of course, never stop until your paper get published. With that, allow me to invite you also to submit to our journal, Asian Journal on Perspectives in Education. We welcome submissions from around Asia. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mabuan. I think it was really, really in-depth and very, very thorough. So with the interest of time, maybe I'll take one or two questions for you before I can summarize the session. So I have few questions, but I'll take only one or two for you. So the first question is from Anansa from FEU. Hi, sir, how are you? Can you walk us through your experience on how it was like on your first time submitting and publishing your journal article?
Hello, Ma'am Anansa. She was my former head in the General Education Department. Nice meeting you here. Ayan, hello ma'am. I started publishing around 2014, and it was a long and winding journey. I got a lot of rejections. um, but my first publication was actually in conference proceeding. So one of the suggestions that I gave is to go and present your paper. I remember participating in a conference in Kobe, Japan. Once my paper was accepted, I presented it, and then I submitted my paper for conference proceedings. I was very happy at that time. Although some people may say, it's just a conference proceedings, but for me, it already meant a lot. After that, I targeted Scopus Index journals. So I followed the guidelines that I suggested. I aligned the coverage of my manuscript to the guidelines of the journal. I followed the journal policy as well as the template that they have provided. Still, I got a lot of rejections, but if you don't stop, you will really find the journal that would give importance, that would value your paper. So when you receive feedback from them, ensure that you cooperate with the editor, follow the feedback given to you. Usually it is accept with minor or major revision. So you really have to follow the comments. Although at some point you may also argue professionally if you want to retain something, for example, that they want to be removed. And yeah, I think the most important tip is to keep going despite the rejections and understand the process of getting published. Read a lot of journals. Also, you can collaborate with published colleagues. This is also one strategy. If you have a mentor who is already well published and is willing to collaborate with you, you may do it so that you can also experience getting published. But that doesn't mean you are freeloading. Of course, you will have a part in the publication, but that could help our novice writers to get their first publication.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mabuan. I think with the interest of time, I'll quickly summarize this session before I passing the floor to the facilitator. So I would say from my personal experience with this particular workshop, it was very well done, very thorough and very in-depth, which is right. We really thank you for your contribution for PGRC 2022. So you first started with describing the research process, what is the research purpose to be to keep it in mind, and then what to publish, what not to publish. And then you enlightened us with target and tailor, how to proceed with the writing the journal article. Then journal selection, we also have given some key advice for us to how to target them, and also different reason for rejection. You also focused on the IMRAD structure, which is really helpful for us, all the participants here, to know about it. And also you've shown a great breakdown on how to write it along with the research gap. So with that, I really appreciate that your efforts for this workshop. And I hope all of the participants here for the session, workshop number 4, that you have enjoyed this session. So with that, I will ask the facilitator